Are you in a quilting rut? I have the perfect pattern to shake, shake, shake it off. So let's get started. Today we're going to be making the Layer Cake Shake quilt. It's part of our Easy Shortcut Quilt series. Layer cakes are 10-inch squares, and they're my personal favorite pre-cut because you can use them so many different ways. So the first thing you're going to do is go to fatquartershop.com and download the free Layer Cake Shake pattern. It has lap and queen options, and behind me, the quilt you see is the lap size. You need 28 10-inch squares, and I'm going to be using the Noah's Ark Layer Cake by Stacy Eastshoe for Moda Fabrics. The quilt has really big pieces, so it's great for novelty illustrated prints like this. It's also great for beginners. Now, in addition to your layer cake, for the lap, you need 1.5 yards of background, 5/8 yard of binding, and for the backing, you need 3 3/4 yards backing. Now you'll notice for this one, our background is a little bit busy and it's fishes going all different ways. We're not going to pay attention to the direction of that. We're just going to place those wherever they go, and it's going to give you a great movement. And again, this quilt is great for beginners because the blocks are really big and they finish at 24 inches, so you can make this and be done in a snap. Before we get started, I wanted to show you the block and talk about what we'll be doing. For the lap size, you're going to make 4 of these blocks and they finish at 24 inches. You're going to have 5 squares that are 8.5 inches square. Each block is going to have 4 half square triangles. And with this layer cake, there are lots of duplicates. So I have picked for each of the blocks squares that have 2 of the identical squares in the layer cake. But if your layer cake doesn't have identical, you can just use 2 different fabrics in this part. Your background is here and your print is here. And when we're making this, we're going to use the 15-inch Creative Grid seam guide because that's going to really come in handy when making the half square triangles. And when I sewed, I used Aurifil Color 2000 because the thread really blended in to my fabric. So let's start by making some half square triangles. So your first step in the pattern is to make 16 half square triangles. And like I said, each block uses 4, so each block will use 2 sets of these. You're going to take a background square and a fabric A square. You're going to put them right sides together. And when you put them right sides together, then you're going to take your 15-inch seam guide and you're going to draw a line in the center like we just did. Then you're going to draw a line on each side. And here I'm not going to use pins at all because we are going to be trimming down, so I don't have to be 100% accurate. What you're going to do is you're going to sew on these 2 outer lines with your normal stitch length. And when you do that, it's going to look like this. Here are your stitches on the outside. Then the center line you're going to cut. And when you cut, this is how your unit looks. Now what I'm going to do is show you how to iron this and how to trim this down. So the first thing you're going to do is set your seam, press to one side, and just get that nice and flat. So now that you have your half square triangle made, what we're going to do is trim this down. The easiest thing to do is to get a 8.5-inch square ruler because then you don't have to think. What I'm using is the Creative Grid CGR 8 ruler, and I've put the diagonal line right on that seam, and I'm going to cut 2 sides, rotate, cut the other 2 sides. And what is great about this is this ruler is really helpful because you can trim all your half square triangles down and you can cut all your fabric B's with this. So when you start putting your units together, everything is exactly the same size because you cut it with the same ruler. Now we're going to assemble our block. Each block uses 5 8.5-inch unfinished squares. And then the most important part is going to be the placement of your half square triangles and the direction of the yellow and the white print. So what I like to do is just lay it down and then just look at each one. And then here, what you'll do is you'll put your fabrics right sides together, pin 3 times, stitch down this entire seam. Press according to the pattern. Then you're going to add the next 3. Press according to the pattern. Then you'll do your final 2 seams and press. And when you have your block sewn, this is how it will look, and it's 24 inches finished, and super easy, super fun, and like I said, such a great pattern for a baby shower or something that you need done in a jiff. The pantograph on this quilt is called Seafoam. The thread color is really light tan, so it blends into the background, and I love how this pantograph creates like the look of waves to go along with the theme of the fabrics with the fishes in the border. This quilt is so great to make for baby showers or something you need done really fast. Great for beginners, and babies will love it because of all of the nice novelty prints. And I hope you love the layer cake shake, shake, shake it off pattern. And join me every Friday for my live streams, and make sure to subscribe. See you then. Hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on today's Shortcut Quilt episode, I'm going to be showing you layer cake links. It uses a print and a solid layer cake from Moda, super beginner friendly and super easy, and I cannot wait to show you how easy it is. So go to the description box and click on the free pattern, download the free pattern, and let's get sewing. In this quilt, you're going to alternate between print blocks and solid blocks, and you assemble and cut them at the same time. So what I've done is I've put a print square on top of a solid square, and we'll just cut them at the same time, and I'll show you how to divide them out. So the first thing you're going to do is, we've got it layered nice and straight. It's all ironed, there's no wrinkles. I'm going to do a straight cut on the left just to have a straight cut. And then we're going to cut one strip that's 4.5 inches. I'm using my Creative Grids ruler, and I'm just really lining it up. And then from there, I'm going to cut a 4.5 inch square. And you'll see there's not very much waste in this quilt at all. So your 4.5 inch square is your A for your print and your D for your solid. And I'm just going to put them on a design board so I can carry that straight to my sewing table. And then you're going to cut two 2¼ inch rectangles from the leftover. And those are going to be your C's for your print and your F for your solid. And then we're going to trim this down to 8 inches wide. So I'm just going to turn that. And when I am cutting, I'm lining up the top and the side both. And then we're going to subcut those 2¼ inches wide, and we're going to do 2 of those. And when you're doing this at home, I would suggest layering 3 to 4 at a time and cutting them together, but no more than 3 or 4 because it might get a little too thick. And so the 2 of these rectangles are your B's, and your 2 whites are E's, and then we can start putting our quilt block together. On this quilt, you're going to use a 1/4 inch seam throughout the whole quilt, so super beginner friendly, and I am using color 2021 today because it really matches this Bella Solid really well, and I love Artful Thread. And like I said, you're going to make the print block and the solid block the same way. So I'm just going to show you when you're assembling it, you can decide if you want to do all your prints at one time and your solids at one time, but it's the same technique. So I'm going to show you at one time. The first step is you're going to take from your design board, you'll take your fabric C rectangles and your fabric D square, stitch a 1/4 inch seam. It's helpful if you use chain piecing. And when you finish that, it will look like this, and you're gonna make 36 of these. Then you're gonna go to your solid block, and you're gonna use fabric F rectangles and fabric A squares. Stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, and you're gonna make 36 of these. And then we're gonna keep building. For your print, you're gonna add fabric B to the top and bottom. And for your solid, you're gonna add fabric E to the top and bottom. So you're gonna be making 36 print units and 36 solid units. To add some fun to this quilt, we're gonna cut this unit in half. And so it's 8 inches square. So I'm gonna take a Creative Grids ruler and I'm gonna cut it in 4-inch squares. So you just take your 4-inch line, cut. I like to use a rotating mat because when you rotate, you don't move your pieces and they will come out really nice and perfect. And once you do all of your print layer cake squares that you start with, which is 36, you're gonna have 144 of these. And then you're gonna have the same amount of your white. You're gonna do the same thing. Cut 4-inch, turn, and then you're gonna have 144 of these solid. And it's looking so cute, super beginner friendly, and let's keep going. So when you're doing this step, you wanna use the same print fabric throughout, and you're gonna build your block. And when I'm building, what I like to do is look at the placement of the white square to know where to go. And so this is how it looks. And none of your, everything is gonna nest, your seams are gonna nest. So I would just stitch that to that with a 1/4 inch seam, chain piece, and keep going. Press according to your pattern. If you press according to our patterns, of course, all of your seams are gonna nest. And then you stitch this. So once you get that assembled, this is how your print block will look. And you're gonna have 36 print blocks. So let's move to our solid blocks. When you're laying out your solid blocks, you're gonna pay attention to where your print goes to make it easier. And it looks like this. Again, stitch a 1/4 inch seam, press, stitch a 1/4 inch seam, and this is how your solid block is going to look. And if you're loving this video as much as I am, subscribe to the Fat Quarter Shop YouTube channel and click the little bell to be notified when we have new videos. So to assemble your quilt, it's super easy. All of your rows are exactly the same. You're gonna put together 4 print blocks and 4 solid blocks and press according to the pattern. And then each row you flip it in your pattern so that all of your seams are gonna nest. Super easy, great size, and great for beginners. So I can't wait to see what all of you guys make. Make sure to tag us in social media and we'll see you next time. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and you guys know I love layer cakes, a latte. They're my favorite pre-cut, so we're gonna jump right in and I'm gonna show you our brand new free pattern, layer cake latte. Your first step is to visit Fat Quarter Shop and download the free layer cake latte pattern. This pattern uses 1 print layer cake and 1 solid layer cake. The pattern has size options for crib, lap, twin, and queen. I'm gonna go through the lap instructions today. If you don't have a solid layer cake for your background, all you have to do is cut 10-inch squares from some yardage and you'll be ready to go. I'm using the Jelly and Jam fabric by Fig Tree Quilts. These bright colors boost my mood just like my drink of choice, a Starbucks iced tea. Let me know in the comments what your favorite drink is, coffee, tea, energy, whatever you like to sip on, and we can start sewing. So I'm first going to show you how you cut your print layer cake. I'm going to be using the Perfect 10 layer cake since it's the size of a layer cake. I did want to mention that we have starched our fabrics. When we starch our fabrics, one side will be 10 inches and one side will actually shrink half an inch and be 9.5 inches. So you might need to pay attention to that on the background, which I will cover. But what we're going to do is we're going to cut 2 4-inch squares first, because on this ruler all we use is the inch marks and the half-inch marks, and that's all we need for this pattern. So it's actually really easy to see. When you're cutting your 4-inch pieces, you don't have to worry about the 3/4 inch line or anything like that. So we have 2 4-inch squares, which are going to be our fabric A's. For our fabric B, we're going to cut 2 3.5-inch squares. And this piece, what I would do is put it in your scrap bin and just save it for a future project. And so 3.5 plus 3.5 is 7. So I will just cut the 7-inch first. And then I will cut the 3.5. And these will be my fabric B's. We'll label those and put those on a design board. Then I'm going to show you my background, and the background is the one that we have to pay attention to if you starch. So we need to cut a 3.5 by 9.5 inch rectangle, and we can get that from this width, but you can see this width is shorter, so we don't want to use that one because it's shorter. So let's cut that first. Let's cut a 3.5 by 9.5 inch rectangle using your longest side if you starched. If you didn't starch, it really doesn't matter. So 3.5. And then we'll trim this to 9.5. And this one is going to be your fabric D. So we'll put that there. And then I will do 2 more 4-inch squares. And those will be going with my fabric A's. And these, when I cut them, will be my fabric C's. So when you're using a Bella Solid, whether it's the layer cake or yardage, there isn't a right or wrong side. So when you're sewing, you don't have to worry about that like you would with a print. So we're going to start with our half square triangles. I'm going to take a fabric A and a fabric C. I'm going to put those right sides together. And obviously on the solid, you can just ignore that. I'm going to use the Creative Grid Seam Guide. And what that's going to do is if I line up the center of this ruler, it's going to make a line on each side a 1/4 inch away. Or you could use a regular ruler, draw a line in the center, and then draw a line a 1/4 inch away. Either way, whatever is your preference. From there, you're going to sew on these 2 outside lines, and that's what it's going to look like with this dark thread. When we make this quilt, we're going to either use a white or cream thread. This we use blue just so we could show you. And that center line, you're going to cut. You're going to press this towards your fabric A, and it's going to come out a little bit bigger, and you're going to want to trim that down. After you cut that apart, I'm going to take this, I'm going to press towards the red. I'm going to use the Perfect 10 ruler. Put the diagonal line of the ruler right on that seam, cut 2 sides, rotate your block or your unit, use the 3.5 inch lines, and trim this. Now, depending on which size you're making will determine how many of these you make. For the size we're doing, we're going to make 144. Now what you're going to do is take a fabric B, 2 matching half square triangles, and we're going to make an espresso unit. And it's going to look like this. You're going to make 72. But what I wanted to point out is if you're somebody who saves all your leftover half square triangles and you have a lot of 3.5 inch unfinished half square triangles, you can make this a scrappy block and build up the quilt over a long period of time. So now you're going to take this one. You're going to take another espresso unit, and they look exactly the same. But what we want to do is rotate that so your seams will nest and it looks the same rotated. Then you're going to add a fabric D rectangle. And when you put these together, you can see that the seams nest by rotating that. So you can just feel it and see if your seams nest. You're going to use a 1/4 inch seam right here. Put that together, and this is going to be your cappuccino unit. So we move from making an espresso unit to a cappuccino unit. Now we're going to take 4 cappuccino units and make a latte block. So like I said, you're going to take 4 of these blocks, you're going to rotate them, and when you rotate them, you can pay attention to where your white is. So you're going to sew these together. All your seams will nest. You're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam, press according to the pattern, and then sew your final seam. And I'm going to show you how your block looks. It's beautiful, and it finishes at 18 inches, and it's unfinished at 18.5 inches. And again, this would make a wonderful scrappy quilt. You can see the matching fabrics here. You can see how you could just make this totally scrappy and change it up. So now you can see when we laid out our block, all of our blocks touch, and there isn't any type of sashing that goes between them. But if you follow our cutting and our pressing, all of your seams will nest, and you can see how beautiful this would be scrappy. For this pantograph quilting, we chose the Blood Orange Peel Pantograph. It's an orange peel that's turned vertical and horizontal with a little circle in between those. The curves balance out all of the triangle points, and it matches the happy vibe of the quilt. The thread we used is white to match the background solid of the quilt, and it blends really nicely with our backing. Let me know what you think of the layer cake latte, and also let me know if you're going to make this scrappy or as planned. I can't wait to see you on next Friday's live stream, and make sure to subscribe. Hi, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on today's Shortcut series, we are going to be cutting up a layer cake, adding some background fabric to give you a beginner quilt. If you're a beginner, this is a great quilt to start with. All you need is a layer cake. Today we're using Lindsay McCrae's Flowers for Freya because we really like all the bright colors in it. And you need 2 1/8 yards background and then binding and backing. I am stitching with the 2000 Aurifil. Color 2000 is my favorite, and since we're working with layer cakes, we're going to use the Perfect 10 ruler that is perfect for cutting layer cakes. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how to cut your layer cake. We do have a diagram on our free pattern. The first thing I will do is cut a straight line to go from. And then I'm going to cut a 4.5 inch strip. And this ruler is great because it just has markings at the 1/2 inches, so it's easy to see, and that's what we're using today. And I'm going to cut a 2.5 inch strip. And then you can save this for another project. From your 4.5 inch strip, you're going to cut one 4.5 inch square. So I'm going to line the ruler up right here. Rotate. And you're going to cut a 4.5 inch square. And then we're going to cut a 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangle. And then this is scrap, so you can save this for another project. And that will be your fabric A. I'm going to put this on a Lori Holt design board so it is easy to keep everything labeled. So that's your A and B. We'll come back and we're going to cut two 2.5 inch strips from this strip. And when you're cutting, you could cut a couple of layer cakes at a time. I would probably only do a max of 3 at a time. And I'm going to cut a 5 inch piece. And then I will move this down to 2.5, and that's going to give you two 2.5 inch squares. One will be for fabric C, and one will be for fabric D. And you're going to follow your pattern, and you're going to cut 36 of your layer cake squares just like this, and you're going to cut all of your background fabrics, and we're going to put our block together. This quilt is super simple. On your first step, you're going to lay a fabric A, a fabric F, and a fabric C square. You want the block to be scrappy, so you just want to make sure the A and the C are different fabrics. Remove your alphabetties. You will put these two fabrics right sides together, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, and press. Once that is done, you will attach that to your fabric A square, and this sweet unit will measure 4.5 by 6.5, and you're going to make 36 of these. We're going to keep building on this block. We're going to put a fabric F and a fabric B rectangle together. Now you want your fabric C that was here to match the fabric B. So these two match. You will put these two fabrics right sides together, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, and then you will attach that to the right side of your sweet unit. And when that is assembled, it's going to measure 6.5 inches square, and you're also going to make 36 of these. To keep building your block, you're going to lay out two fabric E rectangles and a fabric D square. And first, you will take your first fabric E, put that right sides together, and stitch. Do the same thing here, right sides together, stitch. We'll put these together, and this is going to be your Lollies unit. Now we're going to take 4 of these to build our block. So to build your block, you just need 4 of your units. And this is meant to be totally scrappy, and the most important thing is to pay attention to where this fabric is, the bigger fabric, just so that everything is lined up correctly. And so you're going to have 2 bigger squares here and 2 bigger squares here, and we try to do this pretty scrappy so that the fabrics don't touch. And you're just going to put these right sides together and pin, right sides together and pin. Once you press, you will pin and stitch across, and you will have your Layer Cake Lollies block. It will measure 16.5 inches square, and you're going to make 9 of these, and then we'll assemble the quilt. Very easy, very beginner. Lay out your blocks 3 blocks across and 3 blocks down. Assemble your blocks into rows, then assemble your 3 rows together into your quilt center. Once your quilt center is assembled, you're going to add your side borders, press, and then add your top and bottom borders. And there you have it. The Layer Cake Lollies is a wonderful quilt. It will look good in any type of fabrics, even batiks. So try it out, share it with us on social media, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, it's Kimberly from the Fat Quarter Shop, and I'm here with a brand new shortcut quilt called Layer Cake Custard. You can download the free pattern in the links below, print it, and I'll get started. What you need is 1 load layer cake and a background fabric. We're going to first start by making our custard block. To start that, we're going to make a 9 patch. Super simple beginner stitching. You're just going to have 5 fabric C's and 4 fabric B's. Use a 1/4 inch seam and put those together like that, and then put that together. And ta-da! Magically you have a simple 9 patch. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut this into quarters. So that would be 6 1/4 inches. You're going to just take a simple Creative Grids ruler, put 6 1/4 inches on the edge, trim. Be very careful not to move your fabric. The less you move, the better. And you are going to have 4 custard units. To finish your custard block, you're going to have your 4 custard units, 2 fabric G rectangles, press, then add your fabric F rectangles and press, and you've got your custard block, which is your first block in this quilt. So let's move to the second block. To make your cake block, which is your final block, you're going to use a fabric A layer cake square, add fabric E rectangles and press, and then add fabric D rectangles and press. And this is your cake block, and all you have to do now is alternate your cake and your custard blocks. There's no sashing, no borders, super easy. So make sure to make this layer cake custard quilt. We'd love to see what you make. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on today's Shortcut Quilt we have a really fun quilt. It's called Layer Cake Loop. The best thing about it is it's great for beginners, and it's also great for all of those really big prints that you don't know what to do with. So this is a completely free pattern you can download at Fat Quarter Shop. We have 4 sizes: throw, lap, queen, and king. And today we are using the Maureen McCormick fabric called Flower Power, and it has lots of really big prints, and she is definitely from the Brady Bunch, and the fabric is made by Moda. And so what I want you to do is grab a layer cake that you have that has big, bold prints. All you need is 1 layer cake or 36 10-inch squares to make the throw size, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So in the throw size, you're going to make 16 blocks. So I'm going to focus on the throw size and kind of give you some tips on picking your fabrics for your layer cakes. From 16 of your layer cake squares, you're going to cut an 8.5-inch square that's going to go here for your fabric A. From another 16 squares, you're going to cut 2 4.5 by 8.5-inch rectangles from each square. And then from 4 remaining 10-inch squares, from each one cut 4 4.5-inch squares. And that's going to give you the fabric C's. Now if you want more variety, you could cut the fabric C's from more than just 4 prints if you have more than that from your layer cake. But what I wanted to talk about is your scale of fabric. When you're picking your fabrics, I would go with your really big, busy prints for your fabric A, your less busy here, and then your medium prints here to get the full effect. Now let's assemble the block. So like I said, this is a super beginner pattern. Your fabric B's are here, and your fabric A and C are here. And I did starch my fabric, and you do have enough in the layer cake to starch if you want to. But this is very easy. You're just gonna sew this unit to this unit with a 1/4-inch seam, press according to the pattern, and it will look like this. Then you're gonna go to the right side of the block and sew these 2 together with a 1/4-inch seam, and you have this. From there, you're gonna place these right sides together, pin, sew with a 1/4-inch seam, and you have your block. So your block here finishes at 12.5, so it's nice and big and beginner friendly. Now let me show you the options for laying your quilt out. So this is the throw size quilt, and it has 4 blocks across and 4 blocks down. And the key to this is to follow our guide on block placement. And that's in your free pattern. And you'll see that blocks 1 and 3 are the same direction, and blocks 2 and 4 are the same direction. And that changes per row. So you'll see if I take block 1, it's just like we made it with the same placement. And block 3, same placement. But then when you look at block 2, it's going to be twisted one way, and the same thing here, you're going to twist it one way. And so what I would do is lay all of your blocks out and play with the color placement. And this is meant to be totally scrappy, and there are 3 additional size options, and you can see row 2 here, row 3, and row 4. And this is a great quilt for you to just grab a layer cake from your stash that you have really busy prints in, that you don't need any background, and you can make a quilt in a day. So guys, if you love this quilt, you might also love Layer Cake Lemonade because it has a very similar feel with no background. It's actually one of my favorites. I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel and follow us on social media, and I'll see you next time. This is our fastest shortcut quilt ever, and it's called Layer Cake Lattice. All you need is one Moda layer cake and a background fabric. Today, we're using the Valley Collection by Chelsea and Sherry for Moda Fabrics. So go to fatquartershop.com, go to our free pattern page, and download our free full color pattern, and let's get started. Our first step is to make our lattice strip sets. You're going to sew together 2 fabric C rectangles and a fabric B rectangle. You're going to stitch with a 1/4 inch seam using RFL Color 2000, which of course is my favorite thread color. You're going to press, make 35. Now we're going to cut our strip set in half. So we're going to turn it, and we're going to cut it 3 1/4 inches wide. So first I'm going to take my Creative Grids ruler, and I'm going to line up the 3 1/4. And then I'm going to line up one parallel line and cut. Make 70 side lattice units. Now we're going to assemble our blocks. Take 2 side lattice units and a fabric A rectangle. First, we're going to sew a fabric A rectangle to a side lattice unit. Now we've sewn the seam and we have to add our last unit. I really like these lines to line up when my block is finished. So what I'm going to do is put right sides together, but I'm going to angle it here and just gently go down. And then I'm going to pin in place at those 2 intersections. Then I'm going to pin at the end. And when you sew it together, your lines are going to line up. So I'm going to turn that over, and I'm actually going to sew with this on top so that I don't have to worry about seams. That's all there is to it. You're going to make 35 lattice blocks. Now we're going to put our rows together. The key to this quilt is your block placement. You're going to be making 4 row 1s and 3 row 2s. So on row 1, all of your A rectangles are going to alternate. And row 2, they're going to alternate the other direction. So when you put them together, everything is going to fit really nice and snugly, just like a puzzle. Lay out all of your quilt rows, sew them together, and press. Layer Cake Lattice is so fun and easy, and it'll work with any fabric collection. I can't wait to see what you guys are going to make with it. If you love our video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Fat Quarter Shop. See you next time. It's Kimberly from the Fat Quarter Shop. On today's shortcut episode, we're making the layer cake pop. For this one, all you need is half of a Moda layer cake and a Bella Solids jelly roll. Today, we're using the Spectrum Collection by V&Co for a pop of color. So head on over to Fat Quarter Shop and download the free pattern, and let's get sewing. We're going to start by using one of our favorite RFL colors. It's color 2024 and it's white and it matches perfectly. We're going to make our center pop unit, and it's basic sewing. You're going to sew 2 fabric D rectangles to a fabric A square, use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and press. Then add your fabric C rectangles. You're going to make 20. Now we're going to take our fabric B squares and draw a line from corner to corner using a friction pin. I like to use a friction pin because it's going to disappear with heat later. You're going to take 2 matching fabric B squares and put them on the left and right end of your fabric F rectangle. And we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch directly on this line. I'm going to be using black thread today just so you can see my thread colors, but normally you would be using white. Now that we've sewed, we're going to trim a 1/4 inch away from our stitch line. And then we're going to press. First, I'm going to set my seams. I use lots of steam, and we are going to press toward the dark. You're going to make 4 outer pop units for each block, and since we're making 20 blocks, you'll be making 80 total. Now we're going to put all our pieces together into our block. On the outside, you're going to put fabric E squares. Next to that, you're going to put your outer pop units, and on the center, you're going to put your center pop unit. Assemble them into rows, and put your rows together to get your beautiful pop block. Make 20. Now we're going to put our quilt blocks into our rows. Pop your blocks together, make 5 rows, and sew your rows together. When you put all your blocks together, more stars pop out in the layer cake pop quilt. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Hey quilters, get ready for our next shortcut quilt called Star Cakes. It looks finicky, but I've got lots of tricks up my sleeve to make this fast and easy. You just need 1 Moda print and solid layer cake along with a background fabric. And today we're using the Varsity collection, which makes this quilt a total home run. So let's see what's first up to bat. Our first step is to take a solid layer cake and a print layer cake and layer them right sides together. And then we're going to pin as shown so that when we stitch, everything stays in place. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make this a 9.5 inch square by using a Creative Grids 9.5 inch squared up ruler. The reason we're doing this is when you start with the layer cake, it's not exactly even, and this is going to give you perfect squares when you make your half square triangles. And by cutting with the fabrics right sides together, that is going to keep them perfectly even for the next step. Now we're going to draw a line from corner to corner with a friction pin. I'm using a friction pin since the ink will disappear with heat later. Then you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away on both sides of the drawn line. I'm using black thread here just so you can see my stitches, but I normally would use color 2000, which is what I use on most of my quilts. Make 40 of these units, and now we're going to subcut these into quarters. We're going to use the 4 3/4 inch line on your Creative Grids ruler, and I actually line up the side as well as the top, and you're going to see that it's perfectly going to intersect here. And because we subcut these down to an exact size before and pin them, everything should come out perfectly. So we're going to cut here. We're going to rotate our mat, and since it's a rotating mat, nothing moves. And we're also going to do the same thing with 4 3/4 inches. Now we've got 160 squares, but we're also going to cut on the diagonal to have 320 half square triangles. And now I'm going to show you how to press these open. So first you're going to set your seam by just going flat. Then you're going to press to one side. Then what I like to do is let it cool for a little bit, and then we're going to press open. That way you don't burn your fingers. So once it's cool, you just flip it over. Just open it with your fingers. And I like to just press it all the way with my fingers and then just push the iron along the edge. And then I always like to iron the top so it's nice and flat. And at this point I'm going to use some starch, get it nice and wet, starch it, and it's going to be nice and stiff for our next step. Now we're going to start assembling our Star Cakes block. Lay out your half square triangles just like this. You're going to sew down one seam, press to the right on the top, and press towards the left on the bottom. Sew together this seam and press to the bottom. By doing that, on the next step, all your seams are going to nest, and I always use pins when I'm sewing my blocks. Now lay out your units, really paying attention to the placement. You're going to see a nice pinwheel in the center. You're going to stitch the same way. Stitch all the way down, press the top to the right and the bottom to the left. Stitch your center seam and press to the bottom. You're going to make a total of 20 Star Cakes blocks. Now we're going to start assembling our quilt. Assemble 4 blocks and 3 sashing rectangles. Press toward the sashing, make 5. Assemble these rows with 4 fabric D strips and your quilt center is finished. Attach your side borders, press. Attach your top and bottom borders and press. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you love this Star Cakes quilt as much as I do. I love that this shortcut quilt makes a twin size and it's perfect for that special fan in your life. Are you ready for another free, easy, and beautiful layer cake quilt? This quilt will be a go-to for future gifts and keepsake quilts. Welcome to another episode of our Shortcut Quilt video. This one uses my very favorite pre-cut, which is the layer cake. The quilt is so simple, you're not going to believe it. The first thing you're going to do is download our free layer cake lily pattern at factquartershop.com, and then you're going to come back, watch the video, and we're going to be making the large lap size. For that, you need 2 different print layer cakes, 4 1/8 yards of background. The large lap finishes at 74 inches square, and that's why there's so much background for this size. There are also free size options for small, lap, and twin, so you can make another size if you want. For this fabric, I'm using the Enchantment Collection by Sweetfire Road for Moda. It's a really beautiful line with lots of colors. The pattern is great to show off artful prints, which this collection matches. And the background is a cream dot from the collection. It's not a Bella, and this dot is going to really accent your prints nicely. So your first step is to cut your fabrics. This fabric is going to be used in one big piece for the flower. This is going to turn into 2 half square triangles. So this is going to be your fabric A and your fabric B. But when you set those aside for your quilt, you have a lot left over. So you can either cut this down into like a rectangle and put it in your stash, or you could cut 2.5-inch strips and save it for a future binding, or you could even throw scrappy binding on this quilt. So the very first step in the pattern is to make half square triangles. So you're going to take a fabric B square and a fabric C square, and it's really important that these go right sides together. Now, sometimes it's easy for your background to get the wrong side, so just make sure right sides together. And then from there, I'm going to put a pin on 2 opposite corners. If you line up the center line here with the points and draw a line here on either side, this magic tool gives you a 1/4 inch away from the center, which is what you need. You're going to stitch directly on these lines, and you're just going to use your regular stitch length. And this is what it looks like when it's sewn. Now on this one, we used red thread just so you could see what it technically looks like. In the quilt, I actually use color 2000. From here, I'm going to cut on the very center from point to point. From each of your 64 layer cake squares, you're going to get 2 half square triangles, so you'll have a total of 128. Once you press to one side, it's going to look like this. We're going to trim this down to 3 inches. So your first step is, I'm using a 3.5-inch square ruler. You can use anything larger than this. The first thing I want to do is lay this diagonal line on my seam and make sure I still have room to trim to 3 inches. So I'll cut 2 sides, rotate. So from here you want to make sure you have the diagonal line lined up and then your 3-inch lines lined up. And I would suggest when you're doing this, do this all at one time. And when you do that all at one time, it's going to save you time, and then you can move to the very next step. So from each layer cake square, like I said, you get 2 half square triangles. So we're going to build our block. The first thing we're going to do is set one aside. We're going to place one here. We're going to take a fabric D rectangle and put that right there. From there, you'll put these right sides together, pin, sew with a 1/4 inch seam. And it's really important to pin, and it's also important to make sure you have your half square triangle the correct direction. And once you do that, this is going to be your petal unit. That's the very top of your unit. And then it makes it easy to go to the next step. You're going to use that big fabric A square that I talked about in the very beginning, a fabric E square, and your matching half square triangle, and you're going to make sure they're facing the same direction. That's going to give you that flower petal look. You're going to sew these 2 together with a 1/4 inch seam and press, and then add your fabric A with a 1/4 inch seam and press. From here, you want to put these together, sew with a 1/4 inch seam, and this is how your unit's going to look. Now, each of your blocks is going to use 4 of these. So really easy, make at least 4 of these, come back, and I'll show you how to form the block. So from here, I made 4 units, and I tried to do 4 different colors and 4 different prints so that you have a different scale. So for example, you might have like a medium scale, a small scale, a busy print, and a text. Just having something very different so that it gives the quilt some movement. From there, you're going to add a fabric G rectangle right here in the center of the top 2. Then you'll sew those a 1/4 inch seam and press according to the pattern. Now, when you're looking at a fat quarter shot pattern, you will notice we always have arrows. That is so your block will end up really nice. Once those are done, you're going to add your fabric F and sew that together. So here's the block sewn up with 4 different units, just so you could see different colorways. Now, if you wanted to make your block a little bit different, you could cut 2-inch squares from your leftover layer cake. Then you could put that with a different fabric and have 5 fabrics per block. We really wanted our layer cake lily to float, but that is something you could do with your leftover layer cake squares. And then it's really simple. From here, we're just going to be placing this into our quilt. So on the large lap quilt, if that's the size you're making, you're going to place 4 blocks by 4 blocks. So if you're making the large lap quilt like I am, this is 4 blocks by 4 blocks. If you rotate your blocks where these rectangles alternate and you followed the pressing and the pattern, all of your seams are going to nest, which is nice and beautiful. So like I said, we wanted our flowers to float and we wanted a timeless pantograph. So we just did a computerized crosshatch on the diagonal, and that works really nicely when you have a plain background as your border. We have a nice blue stripe and a beautiful brown on the back. And we picked a cream thread, and that blends really nicely with the fabric on the top and your fabric on your backing. And that blue really makes the quilt pop. So I hope you've enjoyed the layer cake lily pattern. We really like it because it's very beginner friendly. It uses my favorite pre-cut, and it would look great with any fabric. It would even be a great stash buster. I would love for you to comment and let me know for our future shortcut quilt videos, which pre-cut do you want us to feature next? I'd love to hear. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time.